Election fairness and data integrity within our elections. We want to create a voting system that is trustworthy for our country to be able to believe that our voices are heard. And we want to do that in a way that each and every legal person who is allowed to vote is able to do that without the fear that their voice was not heard, their vote was not cast, or that other votes may have got counted multiple times and theirs only got counted once or not at all. I think we had a lot of issues with our 2020 election. That's obvious. I have data that presents those facts. Some of that data is the fact that our election in 2020, the majority of the software that was used for those votes were Dominion software and ES&S. So when you have companies like Dominion software and ES&S who are democratically political driven companies, you have the potential for the software that's running our entire voting system for our country to turn out in their party's favorable outcome. Not only is it the software itself, but the data that then sits behind that software that's going to tally and calculate each and every one of those votes going through it. You have to make sure that that data is also upheld to the standards of non-bias, and data integrity is going to be key. It should have been key in 2020, but that data that's set in these systems was actually owned by the Democratic Party. So therefore, the results that we got from the 2020 election were definitely skewed by Democratic ran software companies that ran our voting systems, Democratic data companies that then determined the outcome of those software votes that were casted through those software systems. So we have the responsibility, not just as citizens who want a free and fair election, we also want to ensure that, yes, voting registration ID happens, but along with that, there's a unique identifying number that goes along with each and every vote so it doesn't get counted more than once. We want to ensure that the software that's going to be tallying all these votes has no political agendas that of the ownership of that software. We want to ensure that the data that comes from that software that then determines the outcome of our next president is held to the highest integrity of non-biased data analysis that's going to give us real, true data from each and every one of these systems. I think that it's very important that we ensure that the data that's coming from each and every one of these voting systems, along with a unique ID of every legal person voting, that is not just a social security number or a potential made-up birth certificate or pulling up, people's past dead birth certificates who might not even be alive anymore. We want to ensure that that ID is official. It's a government form of ID, either a driver's license, a passport, or some type of picture government ID that validates that that person is who they are and they're alive. We want to make sure it has a unique identifying number so that only one vote for each and every voter gets cast. And we then want to make sure that the companies who own the software that's allowing people to go in and vote through these software systems are upheld to the highest standards of non-biased political views. We want to make sure then also, once all of that happens, that whoever analyzes all the data that's going to determine the outcome of all of those votes that were cast, that they have no political driven agenda. And I would say that we also have multiple sources looking at that data. So that would be some of the things to ensure election integrity. I think it's very important in our country that elections are held to extremely, extremely high standards for data integrity, because that's going to play out in how each and every person's voice gets heard, and the fairness that we can actually then trust that these systems are working for us, and not just because they're owned by another political party or because the data was owned by another political party. That's very dangerous. It happened in 2020, and I am hoping that it does not happen in 2024. So that's why I'm putting out this podcast. And I'm happy to hear feedback and comments. Thank you. Election fairness